Welcome to Tavern Talks. I am your host, your lovable DM for Tabletop Misfits. I have here, as usual, Corey from Chrysalis Endeavors, my co host, and tonight we have two additional people. Both are returning members from their specific groups, but we have two new players, or two new people, specifically players tonight, that are going to be our special guests tonight. So, before we do anything, please introduce yourselves. Danny, you're welcome to go first.
Hi, my name is Danny. I've been playing D&D for a while now. Not very long, but kind of picked up the tips and tricks to make my DM cry really quickly, and it's what I excel at. Working on some projects that are in pre-production, so my bread and butter and my favorite thing is how can I make this character as memeable as possible by excelling in one thing and being awful at everything else.
All right. And then we have our special guest from uh, Brothers in Dungeons. So, tell them your name, let them know who your character is over there at Brothers in Dungeons, and give us just a little quick blurb. And then, of course, we're going to go around
Well,
it later and introduce you guys more closer.
my name is Jared. As you said, I'm from Brothers in Dungeons. I play the character Njorn, who is a hobgoblin. It's it's a good time. I like making characters who are believably people, but also the kind of people that you might want to hang out with.
All right. So is
Lovable hobgoblin.
yeah the lovable hobgoblin, which is definitely
It's a
not.
begrudging love.
I think it's a bit different
All
than normal.
hobgoblins are lovable until proven otherwise.
Truth. Isn't that what the new D&D, drows are no orcs are no longer evil, goblins aren't evil.
Yeah, that's their new thing. It's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
So,
very everything's subjective. Drow are not inherently the bad elves.
oh, and I mixed up our table tonight, so hopefully everybody doesn't understand, knows where everybody's at. I'm sure the faces give it away, all of our lovable faces. But so I want you all just to take a quick second, just take a breath, have a drink. We're at a tavern here, so we're not. This is no sorts of. Uh, how do I put this? The rules are kind of thrown out the window here. We play the pirates rules, so enjoy yourselves. We're going to be talking as if we would just be talking at the tavern. So before we do so, though, I always like to hear people's backstories. We're talking about characters. Why not get the players' backstories too? So I'm going to ask two questions because I can't really ask the third question. Well, I could, but it's going to be a little different.
Live your
So
best life, James. Pick one.
first one is what got you into or what sparked your interest in tabletop gaming? How long have you been into it? And then are you a forever player? How long, if so, how long have you been playing? Or well, let me rephrase it. If not, have you game mastered? And if so, how long have you been game mastering? So, yet again, we'll start with Danny, just because I know he likes to be put on the spot. So,
I don't mind it. I normally play a bard because most of the people I play with kind of like freeze on the spot. I've actually been only playing for about 8 months. But I'm one of those people like someone mentioned something. I want to know how that works, what it does, how can I break it. Um, Liamon's Tiny Hut is one of my favorite spells. Uh,
oh,
yeah, I'm one of those. Um, so yeah, forever player resistant DM, but in my IRL campaign I play a bard because I like to make him cry. College of Eloquence. I was gonna sub multi-class with Divination Wizard, so he never win a roll against me.
That's just
But
mean.
it
I,
is
I told you,
cruel.
I told you. But I kind of got vengeance for being cheated out of 20 gold and ended up stealing a 250,000 gold dagger with an Afridi inside. So I'm like, I'm not gonna make you that miserable. I'll probably multi-class in Genie Warlock. Um, I told him I might run a one shot here and there because he is a forever DM and doesn't ever get to play. So I just told him prepare for the worst, prepare for some puzzles, prepare to have a couple of beers to get through it. And I got into it mostly from actually watching Dimension 20 and Fantasy High because I had a lot of college humor stuff popping up on my YouTube feed. And then I
Mm.
saw, okay, I know all these people. I play RPGs are like my favorite kind of video game. And I'm watching these comedians that I enjoy who don't know the game that well playing these over the top, overly dramatic teenagers that are adventurers. And I'm like, well, I feel like I'm basically a 12-year-old in an adult's body with a credit card. I identify so much with this. And then
Yeah.
it kind of just spiraled, and that's how I got into the fandom.
Awesome. That is a unique way of getting into it, but with the whole media change, and I know Corey and I were like when we got into D&D, it was way before it became mainstream on TV and talk shows and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so
What's a TV? Huh? What's
well,
a
yeah,
TV?
you might be that way. I mean, you experienced Oregon Trail, right? Like that was part of your
Everyone
God.
knows of Oregon Trail. Dysentery is something everyone should feel.
right. I'm surprised Corey
God,
didn't die.
just-
Uh, so, Jared, same questions to you. Do you remember them?
Oh God, I'm getting pretty old, but um, I've been more involved in the role play aspect of tabletop games for basically like my whole life. It's just been one of my hobbies. Like I'm talking going all the way back to like Yahoo chat rooms. I was one of those guys in there role playing, like my 10-year-old edgelord fantasy character. He's a vampire probably. That I was in there. That's what I was doing.
Just picturing a 10-year-old edgelord.
Well,
It's
a
called a
10-year-old
halfling now.
edgelord is not very great, but
Halfling with vampirism. That's what this is.
that's my next character. Um, but yeah, I've been doing that forever. I don't know what drew me into it. It's just something that I enjoy doing. I always like writing. So I was involved with that kind of scene for as long as I've had a computer with internet. Before that, we did play like as kids. I have an older brother. As kids, we played tabletop role playing games with all of the neighborhood kids. Before there was much internet, we just played with the neighborhood kids. We made up our own versions of like D&D with our own rules.
Yeah.
Um,
It's called
it's just
stick out
been
in the
forever.
take a stick out back in the forest, and beat a tree and say it's an ogre. Like I mean, this is what we did, right?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, After that, I would say I played a little bit in high school and enjoyed it then. And the past few years have not been great for the world. There's some things going on that haven't been awesome, and in my own personal life, I had some bad things happen several years ago, and one of my friends was kind of randomly like, "Do you want to join our D&D game? We just started a D&D game." And I was actually resistant at first. I was not in a good headspace. I was resistant. My wife was like, "We should try it," and I'm glad that she pushed me to like kind of rejoin this thing that I've loved so much, because it it's just such a great time for everybody. It's great for yourself. It's great for you to get out like your weird ideas. It's great for you to get out your frustrations, especially if you get to fight 100 goblins in combat. You can let out your frustrations at them. It's good for your friends because then you have an excuse to see them every week or so. Everything about it. There's nothing. There's no negatives. Sweeping statement. There are no negatives to D&D. So everybody should be doing it.
Agree
No,
with that.
definitely 100%. You and I actually have a very similar past then because I started mine originally on a very old fun game when I was probably 7 or 8 called Neopets.
Oh
And
boy,
I don't
do
remember
I
that.
remember Neopets?
see, this is the thing. Like we all know what it was, but that was legitimately the start of my tabletop role play collaborative writing mentality. And then it broke from Neopets and then went there to MSN groups, and that's where I broke into graphic design and all that kind of stuff while I was in high school. And I didn't actually find out about that there was like I hear I heard all these cool things about people playing and stuff, but I never had a group. And then it wasn't until high school when I actually got a hold of the books and was like, oh wow, there's rules to this. This isn't just me making up the rule like one plus two equals fish. I can't make that rule, and there's actually rules I have to follow to a point. Now, I didn't realize that until way farther into my D&D career that they're very pirate-like rules. So people definitely did not follow every rule, and if the rule didn't sound like fun, you didn't follow it anyways. So, but yeah, when it comes to D&D, that's kind of how everybody has grown into it. So we're not just players, we're not just game masters, we're storytellers. And the one thing we want to make sure we're telling the best story for is the story of the player. Because without you guys, I could just, sit down and write a novel. Hopefully it sells, but if it doesn't, I'm never going to know other than that it was bad. With players, you get that instant understanding of is this game really something that people are enjoying? But you got to make sure that the players are having a good time, which is kind of where we step to this new thought process. We're mostly game masters on here. That's mostly what we talk about. But we wanted to get you guys on here to see the other side of it. So before I just
God
go off of,
bless the rule of cool.
oh God, yes, 100%.
God bless the rule. Like, I don't care. Just go for it.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of times that's exactly what I'll say. Like, so not to talk differently about certain groups, but I have a group that is literally a bunch of eggheads. And they know I call them this because they're in. When people tell you I'm a rocket scientist, I was like, yeah, sure. What? What? So what do you do? They're aerospace engineers for NASA. Oh, you guys are rocket. Yeah. So that's one of my parties that I play with weekly. Um, and some of the cockamamie crazy things that have make sense in the world of science and not so much in D&D, they try to pull all the time. So it keeps me on my toes, I'll give them that. But yeah, and you're just like, sure, go for it, roll this,
Made a bomb.
Well, if I cast a fireball and he simultaneously uses this, it creates a vacuum.
Yeah,
Well,
so
I
this
dig
is
it.
sulfur
I'm into
based,
it.
and we know sulfur is combustible. Does your character know that sulfur's
yeah,
combustible?
roll that knowledge check, buddy.
Yeah, 20. God damn it.
So yeah, level 3 characters tamed a CR5 T-Rex.
Nice.
And then use such things to kill a Triceratops and then mount its skull as a saddle. And now I've got a wizard throwing fireballs off the side of a T-Rex. I want a picture of that, truthfully, but it might be a tattoo.
Nothing wrong with that.
Sounds awesome. Everybody should have a picture of that.
Your goal should be getting more T-Rexes, so the whole party has one.
No, that's why they got the giant Triceratops skull. So they literally are just riding this saddle. And I'm telling you, they took the time to figure out what spells they could use, what skill checks they might need. Like, I was like, guys, the idea was to teach them to run in the game. Nah, we're gonna tame it.
Look,
What?
they ran forward.
They ran
Not
forward.
away.
Exactly.
Exactly. They ran. They did run, but they ran towards the danger. And sometimes players are going to do that.
Yeah.
And now you have the ability to throw, pterodactyl riding death knights at them, and they can't
Actually,
say
I
like no.
just
It's like
yeah.
you're
So
on a T-Rex.
yeah.
Like
So they're also there. It's also an evil party. So they're 100% evil players. So they're dealing with the party that normal people would create. Just I run it towards them now, digging through the jungles of Cholt and all the other crazinesses that go in within that. And one of the creatures they stumbled into was the Medusa, and before they knew it, the T Rex was stone, and then they had to come up. Yeah, so I didn't realize how fast you could make evil players kind of manipulate them a little bit more when you take their ride away from them. Oh, they're pissed. I was like, yeah, you got to go find the Ring of Winter and bring it back to the Medusa. And they were like, where's the Ring of Winter? We must have our ride back. I was like, oh God, here, let's do this.
it means nothing. We must get the T-Rex.
So they've been playing. They're level 7 right now. We've been playing for almost a year. In the last 6 months have been nothing but there's two items. She gave 2 quests to get the thing back, and they were like beeline here, trying to get that. Now they're wrapping around. It's hilarious. But yeah, it was their characters though that developed this. So that's kind of where we go back to our story. Corey, before I jump into another just rant, because
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm
All right,
great
I'm
at this
patient.
tonight. I'm great at this tonight apparently. Uh, what is your number one question that you like to ask players when they get ready to start a campaign?
When they so before we even make characters, like
Like
what's the
you're
question at?
so let's say either they're new players or they're your group of friends that you've been playing with for years, but you're the game master this time. What is You guys haven't sat down, you don't have character sheets in front of you. What is the first
Right.
thing you ask a player or let a player know?
Well, first of all, it usually comes with I've got this idea for a campaign. I'm thinking X,
Blah.
Y, and Z, right? And I
Right.
explain the broad strokes what
Yeah.
the campaign might be about and see if they're interested. And then I'll ask, so what kind of character would you like to play in said idea? What do you think might fit
Right.
into that? What do you think might actually be fun to play in that environment? And um, got one friend. The answer is always barbarian. Doesn't matter what.
See, Barbarian's
Fantasy.
great though because Barbarian can play at anything. You need the dude who just beats the
Fantasy
crap out of
City intrigue
everything.
campaign, right? It's like it's all going to be intrigue and stealth, and we're going to sneak into places and do stuff. What do you want to play? A barbarian.
I'm gonna bash his
Element
skull
to
in.
rage.
I'm gonna bash
No,
his skull
he's a
in.
dex-based barbarian. He's gonna have high AC, and he's gonna roll well on stealth.
There
And
you
the
go.
right
Yeah.
feat,
Yeah, we're playing
And that's
playing
why they're
vampire.
on the show.
Like I said, we're playing Vampire the Masquerade. I'm rolling a barbarian.
all for it. The burliest vampire at the masquerade.
That's right.
If
So
barbarian's
that's
an option, it's the option you take.
Yeah, right.
yeah, that's how I start. Is I just ask, I give the broad strokes idea of the story, and then say, what do you like to do in this, and then they go their different ways in making characters. Some people start with the stats, and some people start with a class, and some people start with a weird idea that they don't even know how to make and build into the game. We have those conversations to help them build them in. So I guess my question, and we'll throw it to Jared first this time. Um, what's your process? Where do you start when creating a character? Do you start with the stats? Do you start with a story? How do you get there to come up with what you build?
I always start with a character's concept, with who they are as a person first. Because if you know who someone is as a person, you can build things around that. Um, and that's not always true. Like, you can make anything fit together. But for my process, if I know who they are, I can figure out why they are. And if you know why they are, that basically explains more or less what class they are. And then it gives you options for like what race they are. You're in standard D&D, if you're playing in like League or something, if you wanted to play like a happy-go-lucky character, you're probably not playing a drow. You're probably not playing a goblin. Um, so if you know what kind of personality they have, you can narrow down your options from there. And again, it's not always true. You can play a happy goblin. You can play a happy drow who is super fun and bubbly. It's possible. Matter of fact, we have kind of a nice drow in our campaign who is along those lines. So after I figure out who they are, you get the options. Okay, it seems like they could be maybe a rogue or a ranger, possibly monk. Just narrow it down, pick what you need, and then you have this whole person, who they are, what they are, and what type of person they are. From there, you can figure out a backstory. You already know the things that they do, and they just need a reason why. For me, I like dramatic characters, so dead families. That's
Please give me all the traumas in one
yes.
In one back row.
Here's
Dead family,
the
dead
thing.
dog, dead car,
Dead
Your
tractor.
character has to have a reason to be out in the world, and
I do
if they
give it.
don't,
I do.
if they
I
don't
do
have
understand that.
one,
Yeah. Why is the farmer
it's
getting out of bed every day who normally just carves, gets
Yeah.
makes the crop and has a decent calm life? Why did he get up that next day and go, "Hey, I'm going off on an adventure"? Now, it's a
Exactly.
possibility that some really jerkish wizard decided to come bug him and was like, "Hey, you want to go on an adventure?" However, that doesn't always happen.
And as I've said, all of these things you can absolutely make it work some other way, because that character you just mentioned would be great, and I would role play that character. I'd role play the hell out of him.
Yeah,
It's just
it's called
armor,
Bilbo Baggins.
and it was
It's
just
called
like
Bilbo
him.
Baggins.
Well, even without like Gandalf
Yeah,
prodding, a guy who just woke up and was like, "Farming really sucks. I'm
yeah.
so done with this. I want to see the world." But that in itself is a character thing, and if you figure that out ahead of time, it all just lines up. It fits into place.
Yeah, I think that the one thing you said there is the why, right? I think that is the big thing in getting, you know, yeah, getting a character to be believable is finding that why as you build that character out. And I know that hardly anybody does this anymore, rolling stats, right? Everybody uses the point gen method these days,
Mm-mm.
but
Mm-mm.
but
We
Give
still
me a
roll.
negative five. Give me a 5 and a stat, and I'm so happy.
I
right.
have a
So
character with a 5 charisma.
Yeah.
so that's one of those things that when you talk about the why, if you're rolling stats and you get a terrible number, you get a 5 charisma. Well, why do we have a 5 charisma? What's how can I build that into the character? Why is that? And if I get a 18 strength, why do I have an 18 strength? You know, uh, just answering those why questions. But
Oh, hey
no,
guys. So I hate to tell you, but we have a new feature in our Twitch channel today. It is called Ask Random Questions That Have to Be Answered. At this point, so what we're going to do is when this is popping up, we're going to halt what people are saying. We're going to, as if, the bartender comes over and he slams down the cup and he goes, "This is what I need to know." This is kind of how we're going to do with this. So it's just going to be the chaos that adds to our fun little tavern talk. So,
Live in chaos.
isn't that great? Since you live in chaos, man, and you haven't talked yet for a little bit, you're gonna be the first one to go. So, favorite character that you have made and why?
I made so many
Exactly.
that don't even make it to play.
Okay.
We'll go with my most recent one that I've played in a couple of one shots for some people. It is a tiefling themed warlock
Ooh.
um, whose patron just asks him, if you get in combat, just get the final kill and send me their soul. Doesn't really have a backstory. I'm more of I work the opposite way. I'm like, what does my party need?
Okay.
Because I'll play anything, any trope,
Yeah.
any archetype. I'll fill it and I'll find a way. And I was thinking, like, you know what? Let's just make it dark and twisty because he's kind of an evil character. Made a deal to protect the family from this
Whatever.
like crime syndicate. Still got killed by different problems. So it's like now I'm stuck with this, but I still got to fulfill the deal. But still not completely evil. And in the one shot, one of the party members is holding like a potion over an NPC that technically partook in like a kid getting killed, and like he's trying to do the I'm a good player, maybe I can convert you, and you can't err in your ways. And I just asked the DM, do I see this interaction? Yeah. Do I notice that the dying barbarian looks optimistic with the potion? Yeah. Eldritch blast him twice, and he's dead. And then the party member looks at me like, why'd you do that? I go, well, you got the answer you were looking for. You know the punishment is beneficial. He partook in the killing of a child. I'm sorry. Would you like to spare him so he could potentially do more? If you'd like, we can continue discussing this, and potentially let the other child die. That is up to you. You let us know what we do. And it was just like, what? It's like, yeah, like a kid died. I blew his brains out. I don't feel any bad at all. My patron gets another soul. My party member gets a
I
potion that he
win.
knows is beneficial in some way.
I won. You lost.
If you
This
want to keep
sounds
talking, the other kid's gonna die. It's up to you. Balls in your court. So it's
nice.
just very chaotic, but
Yeah.
evil, but not like totally evil.
Okay. Jared.
Boy, that is indeed a hard one. But
Well,
I
it's
think
one of
that
your people
my-
that offered it, so.
I know. Matter of fact, just blow the lid on this conspiracy. That was my wife.
Plot twist.
She just
I
wants
wish-
to
I
make
wish
sure
she-
it's the character that she thinks is your favorite, because otherwise you're sleeping on the couch tonight.
I wish she had a graphic ready of like an explosion out the back of my head.
I'm gonna laugh. She's gonna run into the thing and just throw confetti or something above, and run out.
But honestly, my favorite character right now is the character that I play in her campaign.
Awesome.
And that completely genuinely.
Good answer. Good answer.
I enjoy playing the character. Because honestly, I haven't played an edgier kind of character in a while, and I love edgy characters.
Right.
But you have to do them believably edgy.
So what are you playing? Because I have no idea what this is. Or is this the Hobgoblin?
This is the Hobgoblin.
Okay, I'm just making sure. You know.
Yeah. He is a Hobgoblin Ranger. Like most edgelords, his family is gone. It's so sad. There's a whole big sad thing. Last survivor. It's great. But I also play him as this guy who's never been out in the world, because he hasn't. Hobgoblins are militaristic. He's been a soldier his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
He's really only ever engaged in one conflict, which was a conflict that they have has existed for a couple hundred years against the orcs that live on an island nearby. So he's never seen anything. He's never done anything. And near the start of the campaign, there was, I can't remember where we were, but there was a whole thing where a restaurant was offering spaghetti. And Norm is like, I want spaghetti. And he tastes it, and it's just mind-blowing. This is a guy who's never tasted spaghetti in his life.
Yeah.
Spaghetti's delicious. Doesn't matter if you're an edgelord, spaghetti's delicious. And
It's like
it
the
happened
first
another
time you get sugar, you're like, what is this?
Well, it's funny you might say that. It happened another time, the first time he tasted cake. I thought to myself, this is a guy who's been a soldier his whole life, and I don't know what your guys' policy on cursing is. I'll try to refrain.
This is definitely an 18 or older chat.
Okay, so he's had a shitty life, right?
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's awful.
Like I said, we're at the tavern tonight. I'm not The last
He
time you were
tastes
at a tavern
cake.
that you got yelled at for cursing, we got an issue.
He tastes cake for the first time, and it hits me like this guy's definitely never had a birthday. He's never had a birthday cake. He's never tasted cake before either. He loves cake now. So you've got this very serious, edgy kind of guy who is outright xenophobic. He's xenophobic against orcs, and that's something that he's working on. Because as far as the campaign is going,
Yeah.
he's seeing that this is not a way to be. So you've got this guy who some people would not consider to be a good guy, who's edgy and brooding, but like loves cake and spaghetti because he's never tried them,
Right.
and he doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't even know how to go to like a shop and necessarily buy things the way that other people would, because he's never had to do that. He's engaged in one
Hoping my
act his
players are
whole life.
watching this tonight, and if they're not,
Those
I'm
things are
slamming
what
them into it.
make characters like people say like what? Like I played a Fey Wanderer who was walking on his hands with the group at the tavern, orders a juice. The guy gives him ale. My guy flips over the bar, puts a knife to the bartender and said, "I said juice." Because that's his drink, and you do like,
Yeah,
and
the
anyone
random
who messes
things.
with his juice or lies about juice, this like happy-go-lucky
Gremlin kicks
charlatan
in.
Fey Wanderer that his hunter's mark looks like pastel butterflies. If you mess with his juice, he becomes bloodthirsty, and it's like, where did this come from? And it's like, just cause.
Just because
There's a
it's
whole thing.
fun. You know, there has to be that something that pulls you out of the serious, right? Because it's definitely something you
Yeah.
need, not just on a stream, but in general. Because you don't always want to just be drudging through a campaign. There has to be
Yeah.
something that surprises your characters, has to surprise your players. Um,
He's got a kind of buddy cop thing with the kobold in the party, he's very nice. He's the sweetest little dude ever. He's great,
you put him on your shoulder and make
and
him talk like a parrot.
yeah, it's there's gonna be a spin-off series. I know it. It's gonna be a buddy cop show.
That's awesome.
I want that T-Rex to get a spin-off series.
Don't tell my players that I'll lose my paid game. They'll be like, "Hey man, we're making money for you." Like, all right. So you two told your favorite characters, Corey, and put you on the spot. Do you have a favorite character?
I do, and it's he's not a good guy. Um,
Is it
and matter
your
of fact,
the new one you've or the one you've put together in GUI Cube?
no.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to play that character,
Oh, okay.
and he's gonna be, uh, that character is kind of like gonna be a very chaotic, like neutral. You don't know what he's gonna do. Kind of a I patterned that guy after Hoyd in the Sanderson series,
Mhm.
where he's kind of like this weird guy that you don't really understand. No, my favorite character is the spirit talker Wasadka, orc shaman, who basically has all of these. He's either crazy or he actually hears the voices of orcish ancestors. Uh, I haven't decided yet, and I've never. It's one of those things that I never put into like, no, he actually heard this, and it is an orcish ancestor, or no, he's schizophrenic. So it was
both.
Or both.
or
Yeah.
both, right? Yeah, exactly.
Maybe he doesn't know
So
when it's talking to him and when it's just his own imagination.
So he's been a fun character. I played him in D&D. I played him in a LARP. He just he's a bad guy. He leads orcs to basically take over the world. That's what he wants to do. Is the from the D&D lore for orcs, the promise of Groomish that his people will reclaim the earth, right? Um, and he's a zealot of Groomish. He's uh, very racist against anybody who's not an orc. He wants to subjugate and take it back over the world, as the Jurga, or the promise of Groomish, it tells his people. So, yeah, that's It's a fun character to play, not a fun character to put into a game and put on a DM.
But
Um,
I have a question,
yeah,
and this is one of my favorite things. If your character is doing that, by definition, isn't he lawful good for his god?
He's lawful for his god.
he's lawful, but he does evil
Yeah.
things.
But this is where it goes at grayscale, where
Yeah.
like lawful good can commit some of the biggest atrocities. So even
True.
though you're doing evil, you're that character's perspective might be I'm not doing evil, I am doing the right thing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So then it might actually be a lawful good character.
This is why
So
Because
this
you
is
are
why
following the
I hate alignment for this reason.
I don't like alignments either, but here's
I
how
hate them for this reason. Like
here's how I've
hmm,
kind of dissected alignments in my games. Okay, so the lawful chaotic spectrum is the perception of the character.
mhm.
The good evil spectrum is the perception of the world, the people,
Okay.
the everybody else in the world. That's
I
kind of
like
how I
that.
put
Ah,
them
okay.
together.
I like that.
So
Yeah.
if you're lawful, but the rest of the world would say what you're doing is evil because of the things you're doing, then you're lawful evil. Now, that's kind of how I perceive it,
Yeah.
because you can be lawful following the path that you were raised in, the path that your community believes in, but it the things that your community believes in would be construed as evil by
Yeah.
everyone else.
Yeah. Sacrificing the baby every week, it's not a good thing.
I don't
Right.
know, depending on what you got for it.
That's all I'm saying. So that's where the lawful versus the evil portion comes in.
But then again, I honestly don't use alignments very much in
Yeah.
my games anymore.
I
I want to know, as Jared was saying, what's your character? What motivates them? And if you start playing way off of character to get more loot or to do, then we'll have a conversation. But I just want to know who the person is. That's really what matters
Yeah,
to me. I don't
my
want to.
character is evil, but he killed a child killer. Like, can't be
yeah.
that evil.
Is he
Like,
really
can I
like
not
that's
save the other?
that's I guess what
Yeah,
the
he'll kill
biggest
anyone.
difference is though, right? Is like the way I normally tell people with my alignment in my games is I was like, what is your alignment up until when we start playing? And that kind of gives people the idea, and then I'll ask them why, of course, because you ask the why question all the time when you start building characters. Um, you gotta give the channel points to get the question. Sorry, buddy. I know who it's Chris who's asking the question, so he can offer the channel points. Um, but yeah, so that's how I normally play mine. Is I'll tell people, hey, if you're gonna pick alignment, or if we're gonna do alignment, or if you want to make an alignment, you can, but it's gonna be up until we start the campaign because a lot of things are gonna happen in the world that are gonna change it anyways. And I'm not a big fan of having items that are strictly for certain alignments unless it makes sense. So, and I only pick one type of alignment. I won't go like you have to be lawful evil to use this item, or you have to be lawful good to use. No, it's evil, good, lawful, neutral. I don't give any of the absolutes. And then now that we've went around the circle, and I don't want to be left out on this because I do enjoy.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, what was yours?
Oh boy, character I've personally played probably is my wife. I've got two, but the one I'm going to talk about is one that was around when I needed him, and that was my deployment character. So I was in the desert for 6 months. We played 8 hours once a week for 6 months, and I was on a midnight shift. So when I would go play, I would literally my buddy would knock on my door, wake me up, and that is my grumpy dwarf character who came up, which is literally where the whole name spun from, is grumpy dwarf. And I talk like this because I was super tired and I hated life, and all I wanted to do was drink and make the best brew ever. And of course, over time with everything that had happened, he would slowly start to play into a character where he didn't want to be a paladin, but he wanted to give appropriate understanding to certain deity for what they've done for him. So he became an avatar rather. So he never took on an actual paladin class. But yeah, his name was Grog, and he was literally the drunk dwarf. But I was going through a lot of personal problems, and I didn't. And I was supposed to be the only person in the party. Well, I was one of the only couple people at the beginning of the party that had played a lot. So I didn't want to take a front role. Sadly, Grog took the front role very quickly in the game and just started running around. We now have a company called Short and Stout Brewing Company, which was myself, and then Arcturus, who was our gnome artificer. So that's where the characters come from. But yeah, that was that's probably my favorite character. He made it all the way to level 12 in 6 months, but we also played 8 hours a day or 8 hours at a time. So
Art mix life. You don't want to get up. Grumpy, grumpy character.
oh god, yeah, no, it's legitimately what happened. I said I worked 12-hour shifts. I was in the desert. It was 150 degrees outside sometimes. I would have to get from my dorm where I was sleeping to the big tent, and the big tent was, you know, a good, probably 60, 70 yards away. So it wasn't a long walk, but it's enough when it's 6 o'clock in the evening and you usually get up at midnight, and it's just like, this is horrible. But every Friday, that's all I did. Ran to the cafeteria, grabbed a whole box of chicken wings, walked over to the big tent, played D&D from 6 o'clock at night until like 2 o'clock in the morning. So, yep,
I'll just move out of the way so you can see the character portrait
that's
of
awesome.
Todd. That's
It's pretty
Yep.
cool.
Yep,
and you can see him holding the rune of Djurga, which is the promise of Grumus. That's the Djurga rune right there.
awesome.
A little self promotion there. I also created a game called Runes and Bones based on the Orcish campfire game, um, which is a basically a tile playing poker type game. Um, so yeah,
Nice.
made it. That came from Wasad as a LARP character, and at the LARP you're sitting around camp
Mhm.
a lot, and I was like, I'm gonna make an Orcish game, and so I did,
There
and
you
that's
go.
where Runes and Bones came out. So.
Heck yeah.
Awesome.
So I do have a question for the players
Go for it.
in the group. Unless there's a chat
Nope.
question.
Nope.
Wait,
I'm
no.
literally going to stop everything when we get
Push
chat
the pause
questions.
button.
I'm just
Okay.
gonna push the pause button.
All right.
He's being petty,
So,
Chris. Use the points. Use the points.
so the question I have is more about once you're started, once you have your backstory, you have all this stuff, you've developed your character, and then you sit down at the table, and there are other people around the table. How do you make your character, which may be very different from everybody else at the table, it usually is, fit into a party and become part of a party? What things? How do you give and take basically of your character's stuff and the things that your character would do? Because that's one of the things as a game master that frustrates me the most when I see one player kind of running the table saying, "Oh, my character would do that. My character would do that. My character would do that," and it doesn't matter what anybody else would want to do. Questions? All right.
Jared, I'll let you go first.
Um, for me, like when you meet the party for the first time, and that's a big one, because if you're playing together, I'll use the edge lord is the best example for this. You know, I'm the lone wolf. I'm an edge lord. I don't like anybody. I'm a lone wolf. Okay, that's great and all, but you're playing D&D with a party, so why do they stay? You have to figure out a reason why they stay. Going back to whys. Um, and it's easiest to figure out who your character meshes with first. When you see everybody else's characters and you get a little bit of a feeling and a taste for who they are and how they are, just figure out who your character will like the most or understand the most or just vibe with the most. If you can do that, you've got a reason to stay immediately because, well, okay, this guy seems okay. Um, for me, for our current campaign, it was the kobold that I mentioned, Hedwig, and that is because in our very first combat, my character went unconscious, and Hedwig saved him. He healed him and saved him in the very first episode, the very first round of combat. So right away, it was like, all right, I like this guy now. He saved my butt. I gotta repay him. Beyond that, finding a good a good way to connect with the other players is to
Stop.
just. Oh, there's the question.
There's the question. It got popped. He's been waiting
I
on it.
guided him on how to figure
Yeah,
it
he had to
out.
figure out how to do it first, and we'll come back to it. So let me make sure I get that from Jared. I really don't want if this starts becoming obnoxious, I will wait until somebody's first like actual will stop their speech. But I think it's funny. So
I like it. I'm not
all
bothered
right,
at
we're
all.
gonna do it real quick too. So favorite class, Danny,
Bard.
Jared,
Gotta go with barbarian.
Corey,
Paladin.
myself, Blood Hunter.
Bloodhunters are cool. That's like I said earlier, though. If barbarian's an option, I go with barbarian.
He's that guy.
I'm that guy. I go with barbarian.
Welcome, welcome. Oh, another one. What is your method for staying true to your character, but also integrating character development without it feeling forced? It's a lot.
That's the hard ones now.
You can thank your wife for that one. I think, I think that's yeah. Well, maybe I don't
Yeah.
know. There's two
It
people.
is.
Okay, they're either changing colors. I don't know what's going on here. Oh wait, the color changes when they put the question up. That's weird. Nifty. Anyway, yeah. So, what is your method for staying true to your character, but also allowing your character to integrate without it feeling forced? Danny.
I think for my characters, it's always I understand what my character's position in the world that it exists is in. And so, why did I join this party? What is my goal? And then having a commonality of like, look, you have your goals, I have my goals. If we work together, we're more likely to get it done. Um, and to to not to subtly force it without it feeling forced. It's those little reminders of if you put me at risk, I'm just gonna pull myself out and watch what happens. like like if I'm in a group and they're running into a burning building, but there's and I'm a wizard with water spells, and I'm like, you have chosen to run into this building when you knew I could have put the fire out. I will wait here. You let me know once you reconsider your actions if you want to make this a team effort
So you're
to
the
make all of our lives easier.
you're the lesson learning person. You're like, oh,
I'm a big
I
fan
will
of that.
teach you this new lesson by you.
Or life will teach you this lesson, and hopefully, if you survive, I will help show you the why this happened. And it's one
Okay.
of those of like, because I've had players in groups that like, you see two little girls slightly tinged green in the middle of the woods. Why are there two children in the middle of the woods perfectly clean? I don't know, but our monk decided to fist punch one of them. Two hags. And I'm like, cool. I'm going to take my 30 feet of movement back. Not going to use any touch healing spells.
Oh, throw a fire and have somebody throw a
Um,
fireball at your ass.
I'm gonna, throw a
Divine.
heal wounds every now and then, or healing word if I need to. But I'm gonna
Almost-
see if you figure out what went wrong and how we got here.
Okay.
Don't punch mysterious children. That's
Yeah.
what I'm taking away
And
Why-
from.
especially if they're very clean in the middle of the forest.
All right, Jared. So, same question to you. Methods for staying true to your character, but also integrating without feeling forced.
I would say that you shouldn't overthink it. If you overthink what you're doing, it's going to feel forced. Like 100% of the time. If you overthink it, it's going to feel forced. Play your character, especially if you've been playing this character for, at least a few months. You should have a good feel for who they are and how they act. So when your moment arises, that big character moment, whatever it is, just feel it. Just let it flow. If you try to overthink it, it will feel forced. Just let it come to you. And most of the time, you will succeed at it.
Corey
I
is
think it also adds to it. Like, I was in a campaign and there was a guy running with a bomb to defeat a monster, and some of the party decided to run towards it. And some of the party was in my tiny hut. And so I just started pouring wine, and I go, "You are more than welcome to run towards explosives, or stay here and be safe and drink, and watch what happens." So even though the party was semi-split because we're on in this terrain, um, it 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 doesn't it causes that integration because like I'm drinking, you're drinking, he's carrying a bomb. The people who decided to run towards the bomb, we don't know why they're doing that, but
we're gonna
we're not gonna
watch.
join them.
We're gonna watch and find out.
So it's one of those of like you're integrating because it's like I'm telling you why I'm not running towards danger. Do you want to join me in the safety bubble? And so it allowed for some fun RP. It's like, nope, that's the wine from the shock of the bomb. But I let the party member fly in the bubble because of like the sheer force. I'm like, you're fine. The wine's fine. That's what mattered. But then like a ton of the people that ran towards the bomb took a ton of damage, and I'm like, did we learn?
You were definitely the lessons guy. It's kind of funny.
And then I healed them.
Yeah,
But
there you
it wasn't
go.
like,
You're like,
don't run towards the bomb.
you walk up to them, you look at them as they're covered in dust and grime, and you're like, "Did we learn our lesson?"
Slight amount of judgment.
Okay, heal. You have to give me the confirmation that you learned your, or you're dead, and then I've got to just heal you anyway. Then I'll ask the question after you wake up.
Yes, you did, Chris. I saw his comment. He was the one that blew up.
So Corey, and this kind of comes.
So I'm going to tag on to the Liam and Tiny Hut mention there. As the DM,
Pop
I
that
would have
sucker.
I would have taken Chris's character, attached the bomb to him, and threw him in the hut. Because he's a friendly character.
He's a friendly character. He can go in the hut.
It's whoever the player deems friendly.
But if you don't know he's got the bomb on
I
him,
see him as soon as I see him with a bomb. You are no longer friendly. You
No,
are
that's
dangerous.
character development.
so
All right, I'll answer the question though. Method for staying true. I agree 100% with what Jared said about just going with the flow. You've played this character, be comfortable with it. Don't overthink it. But I also think adding that after something happens, asking myself, and I do this usually after every session, what happened in this session that changed my character? What happened that now my character thinks differently? That way, when those opportunities come up, I can kind of use that for roleplay, and I can say, "Oh, well, this thing happened last session, which changed the way I think a little bit, maybe about bombs, right?" So I changed my perspective. Maybe I've got shell shock, loud noises now scare the piss out of me, and I somebody slams a beer down, and I'm like, So I let the things that happen change my character. I guess that's really what it comes down to, is if you have this character idea in your head from the very beginning, and you stick with that, it becomes a very one-sided character. You have to let the things that happen through the campaign change your character. And like Chris is saying, maybe multi-class because of that change.
I think
So.
it's like this is why it's like this is the reason I joined, but why did I stay?
yeah, so
And
that's
it's those interactions, those relations,
yeah. So
and that integration that allows the party to just continue
agreed.
without it feeling forced. course.
Yeah, so there's so for me it would be literally interactions and reactions, which is pretty much taking everybody's stuff and making it very simple. The interactions that the players have with each other is going to give you that reason to of the connections. So maybe you guys all started on a mission, but now you're getting actual investment with player characters, and you're getting investment with people, um, and then reactions, of course, to what's happening around you. So, which could go into our next question. We're gonna have to do like a part two of this because we're gonna be doing this for 2 hours, and then we'll have to come back and do extra other questions. Um, so multi-class, personally, unless you can show, unless we can talk about it in the and make it make sense in the world, I normally don't allow it. I don't just like people coming up and being like, next level, I'm taking Bard. Why? Where? Who taught you? I mean, if you're a barbarian at first and you're now moving Bard, we've got questions. Did you go? Did you enter a circus? Like, what are we looking at here? Um, and a lot of my questions kind of start that way with most of my players. Is I ask the why question a lot, and most people, if they can't answer it, I reluctantly will tell them. Either we have to come up with a why, like, or a how, or maybe it doesn't make sense for your character. If you're doing, and I also always like to ask the question: are you doing this just because you want a ability, or you want something out of it, but you don't really know why your character would take it? And then we sit down and have a different conversation. So personally, multi-class, not a big fan of it, but if it has its places, I'll definitely allow it. Danny.
I love multi-classing because I like creating either the most hyper extreme focal point that a character can do, or creating something that just makes zero sense. Like someone in chat mentioned a guitar, and I go, you know what? Like, what if a barbarian with a -2 charisma takes a point in Bard because he wants to learn to be a Bard and he wants to grow?
Right.
Because the face of the party has kind of failed a couple of times, got into trouble. So because of his gung ho head first into combat, he's like, I'm gonna head first into conversation. Because bards, because bards, a lot of people think it's your instrument, but eloquence
Eloquence.
bards, their weapon is their word. It's
Yeah.
nothing to do with music.
Whispers is another
So
one.
so a lot of it is the only one I think I would struggle with multi-classing is wizard, because the concept is you learn the arcane in an academic setting. So did you find items and you kind of taught yourself to read, which I've had a character do. He was a speed pirate, he stole his stuff, and that's how he became a wizard. But he's only a wizard, but he's self-taught from stealing arcane items from other
Right. Which,
people.
like I said, he has his why though, and it makes
Exactly.
sense. The same
So
thing I
but
have
like
issues with monk and sorcerer. Where did that innate ability just appear from?
sorcerer's like, you just like had a freak out moment and like, oh god, my power just exuded
Yeah.
forth because it was
Okay.
blatant.
The X-Men
But like,
Sorcerer's
monk,
like,
like,
yeah.
who
mentality.
taught you how to do this?
Yeah.
When it's those kinds of things, I like party
Yeah.
interactions, but I just think it's funny having that. Either I'm going super charisma based or super dex or like focal point on the one stat, or I'm just gonna go complete opposite end and not be good at it, but I want to do it because I think it's funny and fun to do,
Which I
to
can
have that.
I can agree with that. Okay. Jared, multi-class, love it, hate it.
Basically everything that's been said so far. I like it. I just think it has to make sense. It's not that hard to make things make sense as long as you figure out at some point this is what I want to do, um, and just work your way towards that making some kind of sense. Again, like wizard is a hard one to multi-class. because there does have to be some kind of understanding of like the science aspect of magic. So as long as you give me a little bit of build up, if I was running the game, just give me a little bit of build up, and then it's fine by my.
That's frightening, but funny. Yeah, Corey. So, as a game master and as a player, which multi-class or no?
I'm gonna say I completely agree with you. There has to be a reason. I've had so, especially running 3.5 or Pathfinder, where there is a pathway to the greatest number of skills you can have. I've got a friend who doesn't matter what character he's gonna play, 2 levels of rogue to start. That doesn't matter what he's gonna
Well,
play.
yeah, because he
Two
gets
levels of rogue.
36 stats, like 36,
Yeah,
36 skill points as a
gives
rogue
2
in
points. Yeah,
3-5.
exactly. So, and it's like, so I'm with you. It should have a purpose, a reason.
Yeah.
Um, the class should be part of the character, not just the abilities that you grab along the way.
Yeah.
So,
I think also like your character's personality would also semi dictate like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like
But a lot of people don't get that developed into a character. Like you don't get, they don't find a personality for it, which I think is one thing we definitely want to talk about. Um, and please let me know if we're popping tonight again, so we can hang out for another 15, 30 minutes if we want to, or we can cut it. We can come back and do a part 2 next week. Um, but we're at our hour, so if we want to do last call, or do you guys want to keep going?
I'm good for whichever's.
Cool.
I can go
Good.
one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah. Then what we're gonna do real quick is I'm just gonna do a quick 1 minute break, and we'll come right back and we'll continue. And all that means is I'm gonna take a step back for a second. All right. Really, all I did is
nice.
I ran it, so that was all it was. So, for anybody that cared. But yeah. With that, come back to the tavern, chill out here for a little bit longer. If anybody needs to go refill.
Excuse, I'm gonna step out for a sec.
I'm gonna open my door.
Yeah, let's chill here.
AC's running. It's a little chilly in here now. Get some of this cold air out.
I never have that problem.
The channels again, and of course we are back. Um, so with this, like I said, we're kind of stepping out a little bit of a ways, asking some of these questions, but really these are questions that we wanted to answer for players. Is like, why do you do things that you do as players, and what makes the game fun as a player? Uh, One of the main things I would love to see more players do is definitely keep that interaction with the game master, but make sure that the game master knows your steps ahead. Sometimes it's fun to throw the game master off, but it's really more exciting when you can give them kind of the goals that you want to achieve with your character, especially when it's big things like multi-classing or, I really would love to see this type of item, giving the game master those gifts just as the game master can give them back to you is a lot easier if we know what gifts to hand out to the players to make the players have a lot of fun. Um, so I'm going to ask you guys a question. It's something because I know for us as game masters, it can be really struggling. Do you like to have your players, or do you like to have it as players, where you already know your party and already have a objective before you start episode one of your campaign, or do you like to take that first session to and then require and then either have an idea of what's going or not have any idea and make it all on the game master to come up with how you get your party together? Which one do you guys prefer?
I could definitely go either way with it, but as a preference, I prefer to meet the party in the first session.
Okay.
Um, and that is mostly because your connection to the party will feel less forced later. If you have this like, yeah, they met and this and that, unless you did some kind of like a session zero, without everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you did do that, it somewhere along the lines, at least early on, it will feel forced.
Okay.
Rather than if you just let them meet, and who cares if it's the old trope, you start in a tavern, your characters are all there, the old trope. It works.
It does.
Because that's a place where adventurers go.
Right. Especially
An adventuring board.
yeah, like, hey, let's all surround the board. Where are we going today, guys?
Crap, this needs 3 people. It's a lot of gold.
Three of you suddenly reach forward for the same one.
Let me just look
Boom,
around
there it
here.
is.
Who looks like the biggest guy here? Let me see if I can find him.
No, like that. I was playing a game with some people to test out some stuff, and the paladin, like, because everyone except me was playing a monstrous race, was like, oh, like, you look like you might be squishy. We go, there's a ton of goblins, he uses something that caused all of them to be frightened, they all circle up, I cast a 6th level fireball, and then I just look at him and go, you can't be squishy if they don't get to you. And it's kind of like that, it was like that animosity, but like
The
that
stunning
is
of,
what
like-
kind of like, oh, okay,
You're-
you are a weak tiny human, but you make very big explosions.
Right.
But for me, I think it's more depending on who I'm playing with. If I know the players, we kind of already know how each other reacts and how to read each other at a table.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with the party not knowing each other. If no one knows how everyone interacts, how people take things, I'd rather it be a group that's already formed, because you kind of set the expectation of, like, my guy's kind of gonna run in head first, my guy's kind of be like the parental figure to kind of keep us out of trouble, my guy's probably the one that's gonna get us into trouble with doing things I probably shouldn't be doing. So you set that expectation, so it's not like, oh my god, why'd you do this? It's like, okay, yeah, like, I'm prepped that you are going to try and pickpocket people, and this will probably never end well.
Right. So there is this feeling though that you guys don't mind the trope of the tavern, or those normal things, and allowing players to just kind of be that weird, because if you think about it in a tavern sense, like, you didn't know these people from anything. Like, how do you connect it? And as a game master, it's sometimes difficult, especially if you haven't played with or people don't have a deep enough backstory to be able to kind of like connect everybody. But I also think that has to kind of go back on the players a little bit to make sure that your backstories have somewhat of a congruence, because you can't have the one dude who's just all the way off on left field and everybody else kind of makes sense to work together, but this guy's never going to touch within anything. He's going to help at all. But yeah, Corey, now as a game master, I know we've run multiple games, and how is your feeling on this? Would you rather like to control this, or do you think it's more fun if the players have more control over the introduction?
So I think doing a session zero individually with each player works the best for me. If I have the time, doing hey, let's build your character, let's play that character a little bit so that you get a sense of who you are. And then in session one's first time the characters meet each other, I think that works best. that gives me, two things. One, it gives me the opportunity to go away from each of these one shots, these session zeros, and weave together a tale that actually does fit these characters. So there's a reason for them all to be together. Um, and two, it it helps them know themselves, so they're not just looking at a character sheet, jumping into trying to play a character that they don't really know yet. They don't have any clue how they might react yet. It's given them a little bit of a prep, so to speak, so that first day at the table with everybody, they get fully developed characters coming to the table.
Yeah, no, I think the session zero is definitely a useful way. And we've come up with something that like I said, we talked about last week, called session -1, and that's bringing the group together and kind of picking out some of the big plots and the big themes for the game that you're going to run, and it gives this feel that allows the players to have an idea of well, I have this idea thing, so you can kind of scope that out a little bit larger before you let all the players go off on their own and build their characters and then come back into the table.
Yeah, it's the I have an idea conversation. I got this idea of a campaign. What do you guys think? And just having a whole time devoted to that.
Yeah. So we've sat down, we've discussed how you guys come up with the step process of figuring out the why. Now, trying to figure out how the best way to do. So for you guys, how do you bring the life to the character? Would be the next step, right? So you've done your stats. Your stats are looking the way they are. Do you play as a player into the stats, whether they be good or bad, or are you one of the ones that if it's not a great stat for me, I just kind of forget about it? And which one do you think is more fun?
I absolutely play into my terrible stats. I think Danny mentioned earlier, like a 5 charisma. And I said, I have a character with 5 charisma. It was a terrible roll, and I love it. And I love this character because he's literally a Ninja Turtle. He's a turtle monk. And he has 5 charisma. Charisma can mean so many things.
Correct.
It's the force of your personality. It can play into how attractive you are, or how people receive you, or aspects of your personality. Well, I didn't figure he's a particularly ugly turtle. Turtles are just kind of cute all the time to me. So I'm like, okay, it's not that.
Are you sure? Have you seen Toka off of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2? That's not
No,
a cute turtle at all.
I think all of them are cute. I love turtles. Like, is he a jerk? Not a jerk. He's a good character, and he's a monk. So I figured he's very blunt, and he's not always aware of that. Like, if, I don't know, you spent like 2 years painting something and it just doesn't look that good. Most people would be like, oh, you know what? That's really nice. Where he's just like, I don't really like that at all. I don't think it looks good. He's not trying to be a jerk. He's just too honest because
Socially
he has
awkward.
yes, he has no social ability. That's how I play it. If I have stats that are bad, especially if they're hilariously bad, I will make it a part of their active personality.
I think I do that, but in the subtle way, where if I have a negative stat, I will play my character in a way of getting my party to do it for me. And it's more like, you do realize if I try this, it's probably not going to end well. Like, why don't you try and open this? It's like, I have a -2 to strength. Why don't you try to open this? And really kind of going that route.
Not cute.
He is precious.
Adorable.
Not
Look
cute.
at him. God.
He
Not
is
cute.
precious. And his unarmed strike must be amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yes. He's rolling like a D12.
Like, his unarmed strike includes slashing damage. but it's one of those of like, I guess it goes back to playing that meme role of like, we're gonna try and stealth through. It's like, keyword is try, right?
You're like the cat stealthing, the one that like creeps up against the wall. And it looks like it's stealthing and looks at you as you see it, and you're like, you saw nothing. Just keeps moving.
Exactly. Or I'll play it in a way that like, oh, we're gonna stealth as a group. Okay, you all do that. I wait outside. Okay, cool. I go to the front door and I use my charisma to get in. Where it's like, I'm not gonna, like, I know I'm not stealthy, but I can talk myself into anything. And so I play it that way where, like, I am self aware of what I'm not good at.
Okay.
And so I will rely on my party to make up for me in those areas. But if I can find a way to use something I'm good at to negate that, I'm gonna go that
Oh
route.
yeah.
Like a rogue with a really high charisma is fun to play because it's like you got caught trying to steal. It's like, no, you dropped it.
Yeah. No,
Well, I have
that's.
a really high deception.
Yeah, I was gonna say deception's gonna roll that one out real quick.
And it's like, boom, high deception. It's like you can get yourself out of those things. So I
Right.
like playing into it from like that passive point of like acknowledging it, but I avoid it.
Yeah, we have one of our players on our stream right now. He's an agent of Jinx, which is literally an agent of chaos, and it's an overly developed rogue, pretty much. But his main focus is deception, and there's many times where he's like, "I'm gonna sneak in," cool, get caught. Oh no, I was I was looking for something else. I don't remember what. I was like, dang it! And of course, you're gonna roll the deception check, and you're gonna knock this out of the water because it's what you really are good at. He loved playing those moments. Um,
They're fun. It's like,
they are,
shit.
yeah, they
I
are.
can make up for it.
And I think it's kind of difficult sometimes as a game master to be able to use those a lot because we don't get that. We don't always think about it. I think I've done that in many cases where I'm like, I've built this character, this NPC, that the potentially of them having to deal with in some way, shape, or form. How do you still pull those certain things to give those certain stats to people? A lot of times people don't even see that NPCs have stats. Some of them do. But yeah, as a player, I love doing failed, running with the failure, running with the, and for the people who asked, I do make my players roll dice. I do a 4d6 system, drop the lowest one. So, and depending on the type of, depending on the group I play, I sometimes let ones re-roll. Depends on how much I want to throw at players right off the bat. And then I can't take this this trick, but I saw something on YouTube from a guy named the Dungeon Coach, where he does it similar, but he makes sure that everybody has the same number of points, so that nobody feels like they've just knocked it out of the park. And so what it is you do 72, you roll 5 stats, and then you take 72 minus those stats, and you get your final number. And that's the only way you can get a 20, and that's the only way you can get a 1. So, and I've had some players who have really awesome stats. All 5 stats were great. That 6th stat, you're talking a 3. like
I like that. That's good.
and
Yeah,
those are the ones that you play into. And I hate when people say it's a dump stat. I'm like, is it though? Because I'm gonna find a way as a game master, knowing that you called it a dump stat, to make you use it somehow.
Because never
Because
did the term dump stat. You didn't dump any points into it.
yeah,
Like your main stat is your dump stat. I'm dumping all of my power into this.
yeah. So, but yeah, no, that's definitely. I love playing into failures. The rogue who has a horrible intelligence, walking in and going, okay, I'm in this building, I'm in a library. Oh crap, where's the book I need to find again? I don't. do
And I
that.
can't read.
Right? Like I've
Even
been
if you know the
reading
title, you don't know what the title looks
I've
like.
been reading Thieves' Cant for the last 10 years. I don't remember what normal writing looks like. Um, Corey, what about you?
Yeah, I do the 4 dice reroll ones, and if you roll 4 6s, it's a 19. That's
Oh, so you let all four dice go no matter what.
no, four dice, drop the lowest,
Yep.
reroll ones, and if you roll 4 6s on your roll, that's a 19.
Oh, okay. Otherwise, it's an 18's the highest you can get.
Yeah, exactly. Now
Gotcha.
that's not
That's nifty.
that leads to very, higher statted characters,
Yeah.
but uh, they need it. You've played in some of my games. Yes.
Yeah, some of your games are ruthless, man. He doesn't just throw one set of monsters at you, so six sets of monsters at you over the next 12 turns. Like,
I know a guy who makes his players roll 5d6s, take the highest three,
that's crazy.
and automatically take max HP. But
Yeah.
one of the guy has a -3 to Constitution.
Dang. Somebody rolled really bad.
Hard mode, play that character but a wizard and see if he dies by leveling up.
We're at level 12 and he has 60 health points.
Yeah.
And I always, the first few times we played, me and the other casters were like, and you don't have Misty Step, why? Like, in character.
I didn't think about it.
Oh, I Misty Step. I Misty Step. It's like, hey, how are you doing? You're still in melee range? Okay, we'll see how that works out.
uh, yeah, so we've come up with our why. So main focus is making sure that you know the why before you start building the character. And I think that's a great way to do it because you don't have to, you're not looking at stats yet. You're giving the character some sort of personality before you even open a book or roll any dice. Um, Working with the game master on a one-on-one is probably the best thing
Yeah.
you can do for your character. And also, one thing I like to do is to make sure that you have at least one or two people that you are connected with somewhere in the world that are still alive. And part of that is so that you can introduce those characters in the campaign in unique ways so that people can see that interaction. Whether it's, the brother that was kidnapped 10 years ago, or that made it out of the fire and everybody else died, that kind of thing, but you never knew other than he wasn't found in the fire. Those types of things. If we're going edgy, of course. If we're going normal, you could literally say, my mom stayed home when I left the farm. So when you
Pretty
come
fine.
back to the
Like, I
town,
just
yeah,
left to go
right.
do shit.
I just love to go do stuff. Um, but those interactions are really fun for players, and they feel like they've invested some of their character into the campaign a little more by doing so.
So here's another, as we get into tips and tricks, and this is more of a GM thing, not really a player thing, but asking the players to provide things for later. Like you just said about the backstory part, people
Mhm.
provide some things. Hey, you get to play your kind of plot card at any time, but go ahead and write it out now. What is that thing that you want to happen? And then you just give it to me one session, and by the next session, that thing's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I will write part of the session around that big plot thing that you want to happen to your character. Um, and you give them basically a plot card every 3 levels. That there's a lot of stuff going on when you got 5 players at the table.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think those are really cool. I also love giving. So, what I've kind of learned to do is flow, or kind of do the ebb and flow of the actual main story, and sometimes that goes a like, long rabbit hole down another hole, but that's a different concept completely, and that allows a character to have its own arc that's driving the story. And I think the cool thing is when you watch those arcs develop with one character, and then you watch how they weave together with others. And those are really neat concepts of it happening. Now, for you as players, do you guys expect or would like to see big overarching changes in a story, or do you guys enjoy more seeing those subtle things that you weren't expecting? Um, What do you think, Danny? You have a
I
inquisitive look on your face, and I'm curious to see what the gears are
it's more
turning.
like I'd rather give a generic map of like my background, my connections, where I'm from,
Hmm.
and then like as a DM, you have like this is the start point of the story, this is the end point of the story. We're just filling in the gaps as we go.
Right.
Where can those family members, connections, locations be involved in?
Right.
Like someone who is a member of a thieves guild has to make contact. It's like, well, I'm from a large city and we've traveled there for whatever reason. It's like the rogue realizes some of the thieves' cant is different, so starts investigating. Now it's the rogue's plot hook, but it's pulled off of the paladin's noble background, and that's why they're in the
Right.
big city. So it's kind of merging all their backstories because you're all in the same world,
Hmm.
but it's this like it's like my favorite jokes are like the Japanese RPGs. Level 1 is go save Kitty. Level 12 is go kill God.
Yeah. Right.
It's like how
Get
did
put to
your
that point.
party grow from kitty to deity
Yeah.
and stay connected that whole way through? It's because your world is one world and there are these connections.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's those are definitely really cool ideas, and it really depends on how your game master builds things because you can do it two separate ways. If you have this massive build already and you have the world created, it's easy to kind of pluck and choose and allowing your players to kind of go, oh, I'm from this area. So you now know no matter what, when you head that direction, if you have to head that direction, there's going to be interactions that people would know you in one way, shape, or form. Um, or if you're building it the opposite direction, it's very simple for a game master to be like, once they get the backstory and go, okay, well, I can just plant your town here, or I can plant this area here, this focus point. Um, so really, it's just how the game master builds things. What do you think, Jared? Which would
The
you rather
backstory.
experience? The subtle experience of getting caught, kind of caught off guard, but you didn't really, it's not really big, or would you rather see a full blown fleshing out of some part of your story come together?
I like a combination of both of those things. I think that for most home games, if it's a homebrew setting, because like Curse of Strahd, you're not really going to do much of that. But most homebrew games in a homebrew setting, um, you'll probably see something of your character's story come up. And I like for there to be maybe one big thing and then a lot of subtle stuff. But it very much depends on the world. Um, in our campaign, we very, very recently, within the past couple of episodes, had a great, huge, tremendous bombshell dropped on all of us because it affects all of us and all of our backstories simultaneously. It is that all of our characters are demigods. Um, that is a big, huge bombshell, and
I'm
it's
curious
nice
how
to
that tied together
explore.
real quick.
You are now all
Yeah,
connected whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
there's that immediate connection because like in some ways some of these characters are now related based upon who their one of their parents were. We discovered that two of the characters are half brothers now, and another two characters are cousins, I believe. um, so it's cool when some big stuff happens, but if you keep doing too much of it, you lose out on some of the little subtlety. And little subtle stuff is great because a lot of character development happens in those small moments. Um, a big moment like that, obviously, it affects. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect your character. But I don't know if you're in your hometown and you very briefly run into your character's ex-girlfriend. That's a little character development moment. Maybe this is a person that you broke up with them when you decided to become an adventurer. That's a good character development moment. And it would be a shame to miss out on those two.
Yeah, no, I like that.
You can always turn
Eh,
that into a bigger one. It's like her new fiance is actually a cultist. And now
He's
it's
the
like
BBEG.
it's like I was just visiting my hometown, but there's cultists.
What
You
happened?
have changed, let me tell you.
And it's one of those things like you can turn those little moments into
Yeah,
big
yeah,
moments that as soon as you overcome them can just be like
just
now your hometown is safe. You can spend time with your family,
yeah,
introduce them to your adventuring party, and have those like fireside campfire like conversations
yeah.
that allow for the character growth.
Yeah, no, I love those campfire conversations where you let the players interact. My favorite, I think one of my favorite experiences is when you as a game master can just kind of do this. And you're watching the characters bounce questions and talking to each other. And you're like, this is actually happening. It's not real, but it's happening right now. And this is fantastic. And you watch them grow
I like doing the
themselves.
opposite, making my DM have a conversation with himself as two
Yeah,
NPCs.
that sucks.
Love
But
it.
yeah, that's called a main NPC. So I have the two rule for that. And I only do two because otherwise it gets really, really confusing. So you do the main character and then the support NPC, and you never make more than two people in the room at the same time when you're talking to people, because otherwise, they're going to do that to you.
Yeah.
Any game master out
Yeah,
there
exactly.
knows this.
Your game master or the players are going to be like, "Oh yeah, really? What do you think?" You're in a crowded bar. How about you over there at the end of the bar? What do you think?
Your
And you're
employee
like,
told me this. I
"Yeah,
think you two need to figure out how much you're going to charge.
yeah." And by the way, what's everybody's name in this whole bar? That's my favorite.
I'm that guy.
I've told you walk into the bar, you see 12 people. Oh yeah, hey, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name? I think of one time I did that, and one of the guys was just a dick like that, and he just wanted to say it, and because I'd always he didn't ask. Nobody asked any names. So the one time they're like, "We're gonna ask everybody in the bar," and I was like, "Yep." I was like, so I gave him four names, and at the fifth one, I'm like, "And as you ask this dude, you get punched in the face because he doesn't want your name to give his name." So another question: feat or ability score increase? Which do you rather lean towards? I guess would be the best question.
Whichever makes me the most mean. Like I had a character whose Eldritch Blast was 600 feet.
I just need you to like own my you will be my TikTok guy because you could just
Like
do meme for days.
um, Eldritch Spear doubles, if I'm not mistaken, the
Yes,
distance of your Eldritch Blast.
right.
Spell Sniper
It
doubles,
doubles
so it
that,
becomes 600 feet. Um,
and you're just
so
sitting out
my
there with a
character,
gun, with your finger gun, going, "Ooh," that's
yeah.
600 feet in a tree.
But also, like, I like having a bard with a level 20 charisma who's an eloquence bard. I will never roll lower at level 3 than, I think, 17
Yeah,
because of Silver Tongue.
right.
And it's just that, like,
You want
that
your
idea of,
character's
like, I
so
want the one that makes
specialized.
me, yeah, like, I'm going to be so good at this. Not anything else, but this, I'm going to be good
Well,
at.
that's because then you have your shining moments, right? Because if you do stuff like that, everybody else, you're fighting, all the fighting's going down. You're like, I'm not really great at this part, but
You're like,
we're heading back to the town
I.
now to get the reward. You're like, oh, really? Because I'm going to increase that reward exponentially.
You told me it was triple.
All right, Jared, feat or ability score increase?
Depends on the character and the level. Um, if I really, really need a stat to be higher, and this I think is more important for early game martial classes. If I've really been having trouble smacking something with that sword, better believe my strength is coming up. If I can't punch that guy, my dex is going up. So early game, I'm definitely much more likely to increase ability score. Later game, I think, is typically the better time to start getting feats. But it's still very character dependent. It depends on how good your stats were to begin with. Depends on even how good you roll dice on average. I've seen some people that just consistently roll like dog shit, and you got to get your stats up, bud. There's
Yeah.
nothing
Lucky,
that
lucky
you're
feet.
Lucky
lucky,
feet.
yeah, because God is against you playing D&D, and you need all the help you can get.
Yeah. I think that's hilarious you say that too because uh, like the known person in the world right now of D&D, Matt Mercer, if you've watched his character on EXU, he rolls the worst at all times. Like
My
Still
favorite's when he
not,
rolls a 0.
still
That's a
not
1,
worse than Will Wheaton.
-1.
one is a one minus one. Yeah, no, I think it's funny that the dice are never biased. They are completely cruel to everyone. Um,
I
Corey.
love Abria. She's like, "Oh, buddy, I was hoping for double digits finally," and I was like, "Damn,
Yeah, but he's rolled one.
cold."
He's rolled single digits most of the campaign, and this is 8
Oh,
episodes. Feat or ability score increase.
Uh, I'm always for the feat, just because it kind of broadens what you can
There
do.
you go.
It makes the character a little. I guess when it goes, it's much easier to say, okay, I learned how to do this or I did that, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. How did my character change? And it's much easier for me to go, okay, I have this feat now, and this is why I got it, and it helps me tell the story of the character. Um, Whereas an ability score, I agree with Jared. If you can't ever hit anything because you just don't have, you need that odd to be an even, right? So I could see it, but yeah, I think that for the most part, feet every time.
Yeah, I do agree. I think feats give you a personality change too. It gives you something that makes your character personal. I do agree. I do say that fifth edition they kind of reduced that a lot. 3.5 had so many different feats for so many different things, which made your characters
Broken.
you well that too. I wasn't gonna say broken, but I was gonna say unique. Um, but a lot of the ones that made your character broken, of course, were taken out of the
let
game.
let me pose a question,
Okay.
similar to multi-classing.
Okay.
Does the feat have to fit thematically?
I would
I
like
would
to
say
have
yes.
Some of them
so.
don't make sense thematically because there's no way you can get it unless it was just pooped.
Can you give an example?
Uh, the new UA that's gonna be in Fizbins is like the gift of the gem dragons, where you get.
I believe at that point, though, you have to, as a game master, you have to be able to decide. There are certain things you, if there's no gem dragons in the world, guess what? You don't get the feat.
Well, but I'm
Makes no
saying, like,
sense.
even if you just do, like, Gift of the Metallic Dragon or
Right.
something at level 4, it's like, have you encountered dragon? Like, so there are feats like, oh, I'm really, like, squishy. It's like, well, I want the Warcaster. It's like, can you take double hits? So, like, thematically, a lot of them don't even make sense.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I'm just posing that, like, if multi-classing needs to make sense, should feats also make
I
sense?
think it should. I think you should have an idea of now if you can. I think a lot of times though you kind of run into the same problem where if it's not going to make sense, but it's going to make a more developed character, it might be worth it. But yeah, Corey, take it because you
And
seem to know
yeah,
this one.
here, let's talk about that. The feat of the gem dragon, right? Um, if or feat of any or
Or Fey Touch. Like, I'm just looking at it now. Like, Fey Touch, Eldritch Adept, Magic Initiate, Ritual Caster, Telekinetic or Telepathic for, like, non-mage casters now having access to magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that can be. I would, if somebody wanted to do ritual caster, right? They're a barbarian. They've been playing a barbarian, and they say, you know what? I'm going to take the ritual caster feat so that I can take that cleric scroll, and do a ritual casting of whatever, right? Or wizard scroll or whatever it is, right?
Can you read it?
Well, no, I would say absolutely you can take that feat, but you can't use the mechanics of that feat until you role play how you learned that feat. Go ahead, take it. We're level 4, you can grab it, but until you actually do it, that's one way. Like for the ritual caster, until you
Mhm.
show me how you learned how to do that, you really can't do it. Go ahead and take the feat, and then use your plot card or whatever it is that you want to do
Yeah.
to show in story how you do that. That's one way. The other way is separate the mechanics from the name. So if the mechanics of the game say you can do X, and the name of the thing is Fey touched, I don't even know what that does. I think that's a Misty Step. Is that a Misty Step? I don't know.
Increases charisma. You get Misty Step.
Yeah.
First level spell from the divination or enchantment school. You can cast each of these spells without
It's a
expending
crazy
spell
level
slot.
feat too. A ton of stuff in one feat.
Yeah.
It's also UA, so
Especially if you don't have spell slots.
yeah, it's also UA, so
Yeah.
it could change.
Yeah. So you take the mechanics of that feat and say, okay, we don't have to say that you were touched by the Fey or you have Fey blood or any of that. We're going to take the mechanics of the feat and you're going to explain to me how your character changed so that these mechanics fit your character. Your
Good
character
way to
can
do it.
now do X. Okay, we don't even have to call it Fey touched. We can call it, uh, my grandma was a green hag. I don't care what you want to call it.
My grandma was a green egg.
I just thought if my grandma got run over by a
I know, I
reindeer,
did too.
and
It
I
like
chose-
instantly
did too.
clicked. I was like,
I don't know what
Like-
happened.
And there's something collective. If we all thought grandma got run over by a reindeer in relation to my grandma was a green hag, we're like, is this
I think it's because the syllables kind of line up.
or
Grandma
something
was
that
a
needs to
green
be
hag.
explored in a campaign? You only can kill grandmother hags
with the
by
reindeer.
running over them with reindeers. They have
And-
vulnerability to reindeer
Yeah.
damage.
Druid wild shape reindeer vulnerability.
My next character.
If it has bells on it, quadruple damage.
It's auto crit.
Auto crit. As long as it can fly and has bells on it.
If it's Christmas Eve, auto kill.
Yeah, auto kill. Just
I was watching a conversation like between like players, and it's like, what do you think about people changing their subclasses when they're in the middle of a campaign and new stuff gets released? And they're like, oh, it's like I really want to switch. And people are like saying, well, like if you're a monk and you want to switch to Way of Mercy, you can say that you've spent time with your healers
right.
and you've learned how to rechannel ki, and you are no longer going to focus on how you used to fight. So you give up the Drunken Master or Way of the Element, and so
Right.
they allowed that shift in subclass because you are refocusing how your character plays. You're like, I'm going to use my understanding of ki to redirect yours to heal you. So I thought
Right.
that was like a cool concept, that you can change subclasses mid-campaign, but your character has to go through a mini arc to get there.
I like that.
I like that too. It's pretty cool.
I think for most things, for the few times that I do DM, if you can just give me a good reason, I can figure out a way to make it work and feel pretty good. Just give the class a reason. Give us a reason. It'll work out. Everybody will be happy. It'll be cool.
Sometimes my reasons are like, I just think it'd be funny. There's on one of the Critical Role ones, there's a guy who's a totem barbarian, Path of the Duck, multi-classed as a bard. So like his spirit totem does it so it's easy for him to like dodge things, like the way water falls off ducks.
Right.
And he gives people inspiration, but he's not, and his character is super dumb. but it's endearing, and that's why people will like listen to him, and they're like,
Right.
okay, we'll go with your plan. They're like, you're a nice guy. You're dumb, but you're nice. We'll do it your way.
All right. Well, these have been some really interesting conversations, Corey. I hope you got a bunch of tips that we can provide with everybody on Patreon as soon as we get that launched. Um, but yeah, if you guys are enjoying this, please just blast the chat room. And because it doesn't seem to be that, if anybody hasn't noticed, we did change up the channel points for Tavern Talks. Um, if you want to see something specific and you've got your 500 points, please make sure that you pop those out real quick so that we can hit those first on what our ideas are. But for the week, just because we are just starting this, if you want to just type those in real quick, if you use the channel points, you'll get preference. But otherwise, give us your ideas. What do you want to? What do you want us to talk about next week? We can continue to dive into the character. We can jump back to the game master. We can pick up any book you want us to talk about or give review on. You let us know what you want us to talk about at that. And since you guys are our guests, is there anything you two either have questions about of D&D, tabletop gaming in general, immersion, whatever it be, that you think would be a fun topic at the tavern?
I think a fun topic is, does the player understand that certain subclasses are not a representation of what they think it is? And I'm going to give a very specific example people kind of confuse. A Celestial Pact Warlock is not going to be a good party healer. You only have a limited number of spell slots.
Yeah.
So I think it's understanding the flavor of your subclass versus what is the subclass versus what is the class actually supposed to do.
So,
Because it's a flavor, it's not its core.
so
function.
understanding the flavor versus the mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think that's a fun one.
Be an interesting one. Jared, any ideas? Any questions you have that you want the tavern to answer next week?
It's a broad one, but I
Go for
think is kind of the next step. Like after this talk, how do you role play a character? How do you actually do that? How does a person actually role play a character? You've been through all the steps. You asked a lot of whys. You filled in all the blanks. How do you actually sit in front of a table of your peers and or friends, maybe your mom, who knows who you're playing with, and say, my name is Rongmar the Barbarian? And how do you do that?
So you've made it to the tavern, now what?
Now you've got to talk.
Okay. Real quick, so Crows of the Damned has stated dive further into character building. What do you mean by that? Use the same cast. Okay. That doesn't help my question. What do you mean by diving further into character building, or do you mean to how to roleplay?
Or do you want us to build one out? Or build two out?
We
so
could
that
build
get
two
extra
characters
depth?
out.
Like why choosing certain spells over others, certain like fighting styles.
Yep. Okay. So he wants to build one out. All right.
Okay, so how about this? And I'm going to do this, and this is going to probably be the first time we've ever done this. And hopefully it will work. This is going to be a test project at the same time. Is I'm going to, if you two have no problem coming back next week, I'm also going to snatch one of my players from my stream, and I'm going to ask Corey to grab one of his players from one of his games. And we're going to build a party of 4.
6 people in the stream.
That's right. So we're really making this a
Chaos.
round table next week, which
All
I
right.
have to go bug my tech guy to resize all of the screens for me. So that's his job. So
All right.
Uh,
So we'll build a
yeah.
party of 4.
We'll build a party of 4. We
All
need,
right.
and we're gonna do trophy, but we're gonna do trophy with some fun. So
Oh
we
yeah, here
need,
comes my barbarian.
so we need a fight. We need a melee class. We need a range class. We need a healer, and we need a caster. So each of you,
Oh, give me caster.
I think we should make that random since we're just.
oh,
I
oh,
think it
I
should be
can go
yeah.
random.
yeah,
I can do
party
whatever.
round table. I like it.
Yeah.
Party around the table.
It'll be-
That's what we'll call it
Shuka,
next
shuka,
week.
shuka.
Even
You
do one
get-
of those like how many classes are there technically?
Ooh. Yeah, but I want to make sure that we're still hitting the 4
You want-
points for people so that they can see how to develop each one of the characters. Because the possibility is people are going to roll the same thing, and that would be
Or very
No,
similar
like,
classes.
very similar.
It's like, does your healer have to be a cleric? Because you can
No.
go bard and fully heal.
You can go bard fully
Yeah.
heal. You can go sorcerer and fully heal.
Yeah, don't forget about the divine soul
Divine
sorcerer.
soul.
'Cause they
Yeah,
are
Like that's a
thing
good
is up.
healer.
Good healer.
Celestial patron, not so
Not
much.
so much.
Or you can be a barbarian with a high medicine check and say you're a healer.
Yeah.
I've seen that in a campaign.
God, I
Yeah.
hope that's what I roll.
I've played
We
a
have the mercy monk with a medicine kit.
I've played an orc that that was a wizard who didn't actually know how to cast anything. So he would just he just had a giant bag around his back, and anytime he needed to cast a spell, he'd just reach in his bag and grab something and use it as his casting ability.
Oh, but I think that'd be fun. Like
Yeah.
create the party on the stream. And
On the
see
stream.
what comes up.
Yep. So we're
Yeah,
going to do a
let's
little
do
bit
it.
of restructuring because we're going to have to somehow show off the character sheets for people to see that. But yeah, we're gonna step into this. We're gonna do party around the table next week. Invite all of your friends because you as the audience are also going to have channel points to allow to affect the party. Yeah, we're gonna have some fun with this next week. So everybody, make sure you bring your favorite drink next week. As we call for last call, we will see everybody back at the tavern next Thursday. Please come hang out with us. Wednesday. Oh my goodness, I've been on Thursday the whole. We moved it to Wednesday because we wanted to let people not get gobbled up by the Critical Role crew. So hopefully Wednesdays brings us more crowd. But yeah, no. So Wednesdays at 9:00, come back here, hang out with us. We'll start on time, and we're gonna build a party of 4 in about an hour and a half. So it's gonna be quick, but we're gonna bring some flavor into it. We're gonna have 4 players who have no idea what they're playing until they get here, and yeah, we'll have some fun with this. Corey, if you have any sort of ideas to create dice of some sort of mechanic that'll allow them to randomize but still have some control of it, we'll play that way. Yeah, come hang out with us on Sundays for Tabletop Misfits main stream. Also, if anybody else has a stream, that make sure you guys shout that out real fast. So, Danny, anything? Last call?
Nothing that's out yet.
Okay,
But I will keep you posted.
awesome. Jared, last call.
Check me out on twitch.tv/Brothers in Dungeons.
Sweet. And when do you guys play?
We play our main campaign every Sunday night. We've got another one in the works, actually. One of the other players, Spraggy, who was on here last week, is going to be running one. So we'll have a second campaign that's going.
Awesome.
So I think that'll be like every other Saturday.
Awesome.
We'll figure it out. But yeah.
And then, as of course, last call, Corey.
I don't have the stream up yet, but we'll be doing plots in Darkenhaven as soon as the box set drops. And we may not be doing it on my stream. We might be doing it on Tabletop Misfits. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that.
And we might be collaborating with Chrysalis Endeavors a little more in the near future. Also, make sure that you do check out Chrysalis Endeavors stuff. He makes his own board games, card games, and they're really fun. We've played one actually on stream before. It was a lot of fun. So until then, grab your favorite drink, slam it down, and we'll see you guys at the tavern next week.